You've messed up, and you've messed up bad. The apology didn't stick. Why not?
You just got to be coachable.
How to get her to forgive you and how to start that process today. There's 6 steps on the process of forgiveness. The first thing on the list is apologize. You've apologized the wrong way. If you've went to her and said, I've stopped doing it, you're the love of my life, I'm so sorry, honey, I want you, I want our family back. And for a minute that might have even worked, but now you're finding yourself where she's using the D word again, or maybe she's riding your butt, or maybe she's constantly throwing it in your face, which she might have already said, honey, I forgive you, and I want to work on the marriage too. But now she's like throwing it in your face every time you walk in the room, and like making your life unbearable. And in turn, you're probably doing what we all do when somebody throws that in our face after we've apologized, after they've said, I forgive you. We want to turn it back on them like, well, it's your fault, because if I apologize and you forgave me, then why are you throwing this back in my face? And you're right, it is their fault. If they've said the words, I forgive you, and they're throwing that back, well, that is something that they could actually change that would help your relationship. But they're not doing that, and maybe they're not willing to change at this point, or they just don't know how to change. Maybe you got a therapist, or she got a therapist. I have never come across a therapist that has given the advice in this area that actually works. I've seen therapists give advice where the couple can live with each other, but even 10 years later, when I get them back, there's not healing and there's resentment that was never dealt with. And it's always because there was not an apology the correct way. And I don't want to use the term proper apology, because if you've said, honey, I'm so sorry for this, and you've stopped doing it, that's by definition, by standards, a proper apology. But it's not the right kind of apology in this kind of scenario. So Denver, what is the right kind of apology? Here's how you apologize. If you've went to your wife and said, honey, I'm so sorry that I had an affair for 5 years, I've stopped doing it. Okay, she may have forgiven you because she doesn't want her life to be turned upside down. And she forgave you in her heart, or at least she thinks she did. But why is it coming back? Why is she throwing that up in your face? Why is she an obstinate spouse? Why is she maybe even saying the D word? Why is she occasionally saying, I want separated? Maybe you are separated, even though she said she's forgiven you. It's because you need to apologize this way. When you apologize to her for what you did, it did not come from your heart, even though it came from your heart. What do I mean by that? There's no way that it came from the right place in your heart if you just said, I'm sorry that I did this. Let me explain. When you say, I'm sorry that I did this, later on, what your wife goes back and hears from that conversation, or your long-term relationship partner, is she hears that, wow, I screwed up, and now I want to say some words to you, and I want to get what I want by you accepting these words. That's why she picks up the unforgiveness again, because she goes back and she thinks about the apology, and she's like, he didn't even mean that, because I'm bitter about it and I didn't just let it go. He's throwing it back in my face like where we're at in the relationship is my fault, which in reality, it kind of is her fault if she's throwing it in your face. But even if it's her fault, if she's not willing to stop doing that, it's up to you to fix it. If you want to keep this relationship, if you want to keep your marriage, part of what I teach in my program through immersion for 7 weeks, 35 days, is if it is to be, it's up to me. So how do you do the apology the right way? Even if you've already apologized, you need to do this and go back and re-apologize this way. Example, if you had an affair on your wife and you've already apologized and she's already forgiven you and you got somewhere with her, you thought it was going to be okay, and now you're back at ground zero, or at least you were at ground zero for a minute, but now you're even further back. Maybe you're about to get a divorce, okay? Go back in your mind and think about this. I'm going to give you an example. My wife she works with me, but for the most part, she doesn't work like me. She doesn't run as many businesses as I run. And so by definition, she would be considered a homemaker. And that's the way that we roll. We love that. She works part-time with some of the businesses that we own, but by definition, she's a homemaker. And she will tell you that her identity is in our marriage as my wife. And she's happy with that. She was in a previous marriage, And maybe she didn't have that identity like that. In this marriage, she likes that identity. It's a good change for her. So whenever my marriage messed up and I started throwing out the D word to her, that threatened her identity. She was a stay-at-home homemaker. She didn't own her own business by herself. And for me to threaten the D word threatened her very identity. I don't find my identity and say, my identity is Brandy Griffin's husband. Yes, that's one of the things that I am, but that's not my identity. And so if she threatens the D word for me, as heartbreaking as that is, and it's something that I don't want, it doesn't threaten my very identity. If she walks away from me, it might hurt me financially, but I'm the primary breadwinner. I'm the one that runs the majority of the businesses. And she could sue me for alimony and get some money out of that, but her lifestyle would definitely change unless she got up and started working and running her own business. And she doesn't even really want to do that. So when I mentioned the D word, it would threaten her very identity and literally her entire life. I'm threatening her entire way of being. So let's change the scenario. You cheat on your wife and now you go apologize to her. If she chose a divorce in that scenario, the divorce threatens her very identity. Your affair, think about this for a minute. You're thinking of the apology as, I want her to know how sorry I am. But the reason she's not accepting the apology in your heart, in her heart, is because she doesn't even know that she needs this, but I'm telling you, she does need this. She needs you to actually sit down, put yourself in her shoes for just a minute, and think about how the hell did that make her feel? Not when she found out, not 3 days later when you apologize, but a week later, 2 weeks later. Why is it still coming back for her? When she said, I forgive you, she meant it, but it's not possible to forgive somebody when they haven't apologized for how they made you feel, because you're not really expressing concern that you really care. And it's not because you're a bad person or because you have a bad part or because you have bad intentions. No one has ever taught you this. So how did it make your wife feel when you had an affair on her and she found out? What all did that threaten to her? Did it threaten her identity? Did it threaten her financial well-being? Did it threaten her as a mother? Because now she's thinking, well, if I leave him and he gets custody of the kids and now there's going to be a stepmom in the home because I know he'll get remarried. Think about all of the fears that entered her, and you've never addressed how you made her feel. You apologize for your actions, but you haven't apologized for how did you make her feel. And this is something that you can't apologize for how you made somebody feel unless you take the time to position yourself in their shoes and you spend a good amount of time. And listen, you can't fake this. If you want to go back now, and you need to if you want to keep your marriage or your relationship, go back to your wife and say, listen, I've really invested some time in thinking about that I made you feel when I did these things. And if I were in your shoes, I would have felt this. And listen, you need to bring out everything that you know you would have felt if you were her, because she probably could use some help identifying the feelings, because she's probably confused. There's so much going on. It's going to be nice as a good friend to her to come and say, this is the way I would have felt, because she probably hasn't even slowed down long enough to think about how she's feeling. She's feeling the things, but she's not consciously aware that she's feeling the things. By you saying, I put myself in your shoes and I would have felt this and this and this and this. I would have felt financially nervous. I would have felt betrayed. I would have felt ashamed because other people found out. I would have felt embarrassed. I would have felt that the morals and the ethics were compromised and her church found out or whatever. Like, I can't even imagine the embarrassment that I put you through. I can't imagine the heartache. You're my wife, you're a homemaker, if that's your case, and like your whole life is invested in me. That's what I would say to my wife. Your scenario could be a little different. Think about your own scenario. In my scenario, my wife's a homemaker. We run one business together and I run the rest, but it would threaten all of those things for her. And so I would have to go apologize for how I would make her feel in each of those areas. And I can't just go out and say an apology. I have to think about, how did I really make you feel? And I'm going to tell you something. If you do this the right way, you're probably going to be in freaking tears before the apology is over, because you're going to start realizing what a big asshole you were. And maybe up until now, you haven't seen that about yourself. And you're probably like, she said, oh, I forgive you. And now she's throwing it back in your face because she picked up unforgiveness again. And it's not because she's a BIT. It's because, well, maybe she's being a little BIT now, but it's because nobody taught her how to forgive. Nobody taught her how to do it the right way. And you can help her as her friend do that by apologizing in this way. Once you've apologized the right way, now it's time to stop apologizing and also stop giving details. Women will get something called confirmation bias, okay? So let's say that she accepted the apology to begin with, she forgave you, things were peachy for a few days, and you might have had like an amazing marriage for a week. Sex could have been at an all-time high because you guys have emotionally connected like never. Maybe that's not your scenario, but if your scenario is now where the tides are not in your favor, she's becoming obstinate, she's mentioning the divorce word, you're separated, she's not willing to get back together, she's becoming more distant, you need to stop apologizing. Now you need to make sure you apologize the right way first. So even if you've already apologized, go back and do what I did in step number 1. Rewind the video and watch that a million times until you get that down, and do that, and then stop apologizing. If she throws it back in your face after you apologize that way, remain silent and find a nice way and a quick exit to get out. Because do not confirm with her negative feelings. Once you apologize the right way, there's no need to apologize again. That's done. Stop it, because all it's going to do is hurt the relationship. An example of an affair, if you had an affair, or if you were on online chat rooms, okay, if you were sexting somebody, do not give details. Honesty is the best policy. It's a big thing that's said. Why would you go and give details on something and paint vivid pictures in somebody's mind that for a lot of people, it is literally impossible for them to erase it? And listen, men, we can forgive and forget a lot easier than women can. Women will remember what you did the second week you were married when she asked you to take the trash out and you had a bad attitude about it 32 years ago. They remember that. We don't, okay? Stop giving details, because that confirms confirmation bias. The next thing, stop trying to get her to work on the marriage. Be cool and don't nag. So, Denver, I want the marriage restored, so I must work on it. I must tell her we need to go to counseling and we need to go see the therapist and all of this BS. You need help, and that's why I have a program, denvergriffin.com/masterclass. Check out the masterclass, and then that gives you an opportunity to apply to work with me. I can help you, but the therapists and everybody that's out there, they're typically going to tell you that you need to work on the marriage. Counselors, they're going to tell you need to work on the marriage. And I'm here to tell you, if you're watching this video, you probably have seen a counselor, you probably tried working on the marriage, and maybe by now you'll listen to me when I tell you that working on the marriage is exactly what's not working. When you met your partner 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, or 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, did you work on the marriage when you fell in love? No, you didn't work on it. You fell in love. What did you do? You weren't working on anything. You were hanging out, having fun, being cool. And now you're talking about, oh, let's talk about how to communicate. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about all these problems. You talk about problems, you're going to have more problems. Stop working on the frackin' marriage. Working on the marriage is exactly what's not working. In my program, I cover this in detail so it makes more sense. Become more attractive. I call this spice. Something that you can do to physically attract her back is become more attractive in a way that's different than what you are now. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you're separated and your whole life and your whole relationship, you've always had hair on your back. This is one example, and maybe it's cheesy to you, but for some of you, it's going to hit home. Get some nair and get that crap off of your back. Become a different kind of attractive, because it will create curiosity in her, okay? So what is spice? You can become a more spicy man. That spans the different ways that you can become attractive to your partner is SPICE, spiritually attractive, physically attractive, intellectually attractive, more attractive in your character, and the most important type of attractiveness to a woman is you can become more emotionally attractive. I talk about this in depth in the 35 modules in my program as I pace you through that through immersion. But something that you can also kind of get a little bit more information on that is Google Denver Griffin, how to attract her back, and I'll kind of give you some more tips on that. The next thing is to overcome the competition. So what is the competition? Some of it you may already know what the competition is. The competition is first yourself. You're addicted to a strategy that's not working. And you might be thinking, no. Listen, you are addicted to a strategy that for a minute even, you might have saw results. And for a minute, the marriage might have been so connected and emotional, and the sex was all gushy-mushy and blah, blah, blah. And now you're watching this video because you're back to square one, and now you're even further back, and it's looking like she's mentioning the divorce word. And you might be thinking, well, this is something unique to me in my situation. Listen, out of thousands of clients that I've had, there's 11 strategies. 100% of the time, there's one of 11 strategies that men are employing that's not working. It's not going to start working. It never will work. I talk about this in my program. The next thing that is your competition is your addiction to pain or your grief or your anxiety. You've got to become a happy man and get over that. Stop walking around in a pity party. Stop walking around feeling sorry for yourself and be happy. There's that song that says, smilers never lose and frowners never win, so let the sun shine in. That's good advice too. Get out there and get some vitamin D. Get outside. Stop sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. Next on the list of competition are her negative feelings. This is a big competitor for you. So how do you overcome that? She has feelings of fear. She has feelings of hurt. She has feelings of anger. She has feelings of doubt. And so when your relationship is on the rocks and you're facing separation, you're facing divorce, or you're already in the process of one of those things, she has something that's called confirmation bias. That means that she has a thought in her mind, and you might be doing everything right. Why do you need a program like what I teach as far as something where it's every single week for 7 weeks? And most of the men choose to keep going through it another 7 weeks, even after their wife comes back. When your wife has confirmation bias, it's not about all of the things that you're doing right. You can walk on eggshells and do everything right for 2 months. But for her, until you overcome these different objections, it's not about all the things that you do right. It's about the one thing that you do wrong. That's why I've implemented a 7-week program, and most men choose to take it another 7 weeks even after the relationship, the separation is ended, because they want to make sure the change is lasting. Remember what I said, for her, and you've probably already experienced this, you're doing all these things right, but then she triggers you and you blow up and bam! Not only are you back to square one where you started, you're further back, dude. And the reason for that is because it's further confirmed for her that, wow, not only is all this BS he's been doing fake, but he's worse than I thought he was. So you've got to get over that competition. This is something that, the reason that I've implemented a program that is every single day, you're in that program with me for 7 weeks, is because Tony Robbins calls it immersion. I want you to be immersed in a new way of thinking, so it's a new way of communicating. That way, when she triggers you, you're going to pass the test. And that's what's going to restore your marriage. If she triggers you and you blow up, or you confirm for her those negative feelings, you're heading for divorce court, buddy. The next thing that's your competition is other people. And it could be people that you love. It could be your kids. It could be your stepkids. But it's typically your in-laws, another man or another lady that's divorced. They're looking for misery loves misery. And so there'll be somebody out there that's been through a divorce. They're going through a divorce. Typically, they just went through a divorce, or they're going through one, and they'll latch on to your spouse, and that's the support structure. And there's a way to overcome that. You can completely obliterate that. and I cover that in the program. But if it's not another man or woman that's going through divorce, there's going to be somebody else there that's your competition that's supporting them in getting the divorce or the separation. So for more information on that, you can actually Google Denver Griffin 4 different kinds of competition. Be happy. Your wife is dealing and struggling with something called confirmation bias. And what that is whenever she pushes your buttons, maybe you're walking on water and for 2 or 3 weeks you're doing everything perfect, and she's starting to think, I could see this man back in my bed. I can see this man back in our house together. I can see our family restored, but I don't know if I'm buying this. So she's going to do something, and you're going to get in a little bit of an argument, and then she's going to really go for the sledgehammer for the biggest button you got, and she's not only going to push it, she's going to hit it hard. If you fail that test, divorce court, buddy, lawyer up. Through my 7-week program, I immerse you in a new way of being, a new way of thinking, so that you have a new way of speaking. You're always going to pass the test. She won't be able to trigger you. If this is something that you feel like you need additional help outside of this resource, visit my masterclass, which is denvergriffin.com/masterclass. In this free masterclass, I give you additional tools and techniques that you can implement because I want you to save your marriage. If you feel like you need additional help and you need to be immersed in a program and you need an accountability coach to hold your hand along with a community of other men that are going through the exact same scenarios that you're going through, at the end of the masterclass, I give you an opportunity to apply to work with me. I hope this is valuable content for you. Godspeed.